To one and all present here with mission of the Maharaj and Professor. So I would like to give my insights on how practically the funding happens, specifically for in case of any unlisted entity where startups, which has been our core area of practice, and we will be discussing on the practical issues, how the company law filings happen with respect to the MCA, or when there is a FDA, how the FMR related filings are being made with RBI, and in case of SEBI related compliances, where I need to touch upon for listed companies, how preferential issue happens. So the reason for me to use the word private funding is where the investor is identified. Broadly, the topic is primer on corporate laws. With the permission of Sitaram sir, I have said we will touch the practical issues related to FEMA, company law, SEBI listing compliances a bit. So for some of you, you may have heard about the words which are being displayed in the screen, or what I am mentioning during my discussion here. And please feel free to ask any questions. And we are also in the journey of learning, even though we cover here as a tutor, we are also learning on a day-to-day basis on questions being raised from your side. We also learn it based on the books. So there's no harm in seeking any clarification. No one is going to mistake about your question. Even if I have to repeat some point or give clarity to the extent possible, I'll cover it during my session here. Yes, can move next. So broadly, the topics to be covered today's session is private equity seed funding, which is more of a startup related enterprises. Venture capital, again a startup related compliances, and angel funds is also related to startup. But when venture capital comes, it can also take the form of a qualified institutional placement, or it can take shape of a preferential issue for listed companies. Okay. And when it goes for FECA, it is more of a SEBI driven topic, but I will diverge a bit from there to the FDA concept. How in a normal private equity, how the FDA comes in an unlisted company. Okay, that's my agenda today. Yes, so I hope it's visible for you all. I may not read entire topic there. Anyway, presentation is with sir. So those who wish to learn again, you can just seek the permission from him. So private equity is usually when the investors prefer, where the investor is identified and the company prefers to seek investment into their equity, but it may also involve convertible securities. You may have heard about the convertible preference shares, convertible debentures. So we can also issue in that manner. So this can be issued by any type of company. There is no differentiation whether it's a private company or a listed company. And primary understanding, it's not like listed means equity listed alone. Generally, it's a perceived notion, but it can also be a private company where the debentures are listed or preference shares are privately placed and listed. So even for those companies which is unlisted equity, but listed preference shares, listed debentures, they also need to comply with certain aspects of these SEBI regulations. So today it's not our topic, but since I'm speaking about convertibles, I'm also giving you a glimpse about that. So this private equity investment, since our topic is more focused on equity and convertibles, this private equity investment is always, equity means is the ownership, which is the base for you. So equity is actually the risk taking by the owners, those who make the investment. So anyone, if they are going to invest in equity or the convertible security, then it is understood that their risk taking appetite is higher. And general perseverance of any investor is, when your age is less, you can take the risk, okay, to the maximum extent possible based on your finance. But at the same time, as the age is going, you have to move from the equity to debt oriented, where there is a stable income. So that's the objective. So initial years where individual is going to invest, or a group of investors where we would be learning about angel funds, they would prefer equity or CCPS CCD. And our practical areas in the startup also revolves around those CCPS and the equity. So types of private equity can be leveraged buyout or the venture capital or the growth capital. From VCF, it's actually divided based on the AIF regulations issued by SEBI. So there's a separate regulations for alternative investment fund where it is categorized into 3 to 4 layers. In that there are various objects based on which AIF is also divided. So one amongst them is the angel funds or the VCUs. So VCF is actually the investing entity, and the entity where they are going to make investment is called the venture capital undertaking, VCUs. Okay. So what are the obligations as VCU or VCF, and what are the minimum criteria? There are net worth criteria, and you need to invest only in unlisted entity, then only it will be treated as VCU. If they are going for listing, what are the IPO conditions, when you can exit. So those exit is subject to lock-in as per SEBI ICDR. And when I see about IPO, usually in the initial investment document. So how actually the investment happens is where when the companies, startup entities or any company goes for a pitch deck, that's basically they will present about their business idea and geographical presence, how they intend to expand the entity, and what is the expected rate of return, ROI, return on investment. And here there is no assurance about return. Please understand that it's not a bank FD or a mutual fund investment guaranteed returns. It's an expected return on investment, and it's usually in the range of 15%, 20%. Sometimes a very good entrepreneur, I'm not naming anyone here, but very good entrepreneurs have given a turnaround of 400 times, okay, based on the investment in the initial phase. A company which is almost proposed to be declared as insolvent under IBC, one of the good entrepreneurs based out of Chennai took over that company from the resolution professional and made a 400% return out of it after 6 years of investment. So everything is possible, okay, even though such kind of return is not assured, everything is possible with the dedication, with the entrepreneur skills. So in case of investment, usually it's a letter of intent. After the pitch deck is given, letter of intent is provided by the investor, where they will say this is the expected level of investment commitment from our side, fund commitment we used to say, FC. So from there, the company will also internally discuss. That's what is happening in the board meeting. So management, in literal terms, they will say it as a management meeting. On legal terms, we say it as a board meeting. So once the core management or the board of directors meet and discuss how the funding is going to be evolved, for which they need to comply with the private placement procedure under Companies Act, where it is covered under the section 42 of Companies Act, as well as share capital rules. So they need to take a valuation for that as per the company law. Okay, whereas such kind of valuation is also required under income tax law at the time of investment exit or sale, whereas in company law for the issue it is required. When there is a FDA, you require it under FEMA. So different kinds of valuation is necessary for the investment. So after this valuation is completed, again board convenes, takes on record the valuation, then circulates the shareholders notice, which you would have studied in company law, or you would be learning about that. So general meeting happens, and nowadays a shorter notice is what is the practice for a small leasehold company. And small means I'm saying 50 people is also small for them. Okay, for us 50 means a very huge number, but 50 people is very small for a private company startup registered, because people will be very quickly responding to your queries wherever such kind of funds are going to come in. Otherwise the response may take late, which we cannot come in. At the same time, when these investment come in, before this investment, once the meeting agenda, everything is sent, actually many private companies, those investors may not come and meet in person, because month on month these companies are under obligation as per the agreements, shareholders agreement we used to say, as well as the SSA, share subscription agreement. They are required to send an update. When I take funds from them, I need to give them an update, month on month update. Okay, that is called MIS. You might have heard about that, management information summary of the report. So that report is mandatory. That can be placed in the board meeting and the update can be taken note in the minutes of the meeting. That is one way. After these things happen, they are going to include in the SHA certain rights that is called as reserved matters or veto power. Veto power also you might have heard probably, or reserved matters is where without such investors' consent, I will not be able to take a decision with respect to the list of items without the consent of a specified investor. Even though a special resolution is passed or an ordinary resolution is passed, such kind of resolution is subject to reserved matter. Such kind of clauses are not there in your company law theory. But in the practical world, it comes in. So how will you enforce such powers? I am saying SHA. How will you enforce it? There is a court ruling by NCLT as well as the High Court's ruling. Unless such kind of reserved matters are included in your articles of association. Articles of association, your primary level you would have learned. It's an agreement between the company and its shareholders, directors. Okay. So when such kind of agreement is entered, as part of AOA itself, unless the reserved matters or veto power is there, it's unenforceable. So we have to be clear as part of whether you're an investing team legal or where the company is receiving investment, they will set a timeline, dates and events when the events are expected to be completed. So you'll include the veto power, after which only the investment flows in. And you might have learned in your company laws, you need to open a separate bank account. These are all essential things where companies, we have noticed, they are reluctant to do that. Why we need to open a current account? In theory, we learn it. Practice, some companies do not follow. That also I am saying it. But when you are in a profession or where you are going to guide that company, you need to be clear about putting your stance front. What is legal one? It's then up to the board of directors. Okay. But when you are signing the record, there also you need to qualify if you are a profession or if you are signing on a representative capacity, you need to be clear. I am not agreeing to this point. So these are just one instance I am saying. So there needs to be a separate bank account where investment comes in. After you file the form PS3 for allotment, then only you can utilize the money for the object stated. So this is the brief process with respect to the company law. Okay. So I have just told you with respect to the VCUs, and such VCUs can be there, VCFs to the VCUs. So such VCF can be there within India, or in case it is from outside India, it will be treated as FDA, which I will also cover it in a short while. So what is meant by LBO here? So leverage buyout is where the company is in distress or it is in requirement of fund. Okay, and the fund can be the initial capital or it can be for a growth capital. That's how we divide it, seed funding or a growth capital. And usually in FDA, there is a concept called greenfield investment, brownfield investment. It's not there in your legal procedure. Practically, I'm saying greenfield is where first time the company is receiving investment and it's going to utilize the funds for a first time project. Project is first time. Whereas the brownfield is where company is already in existence. It's already having some operations for which fund is necessary. The reason for us to know the greenfield, brownfield is as per the FDA policy issued by the Ministry of Commerce and Industry, we have to know what is the percentage restriction and all for the sectoral caps, etc. How much percentage we can use it. So that is the background with respect to the greenfield, brownfield. Yes, next. So seed funding, which I said as the initial capital. When we start a company and expand it, then it is called as the bootstrapped investment. Okay, we are investing the funds and running the company. It's called bootstrapped investment. When there is an external funding, that's where the funding actually happens. So seed funding is where I have done a bootstrap, but to expand it initial capital, some individual is going to help me out or some entity is going to help me out. And we need to understand the entity where from where we are receiving investment, it is not treated as a holding company. In startup, as per company itself, it should not be a holding or a subsidiary or associate. Then it is not recognized as a startup by the DPAAT. There are certain set of norms. So the lenders, in case the bank or FIs are going to come in, they will treat the seed investment as a risky investment by the promoters or seed investors, okay, in a new entity. Because we don't know how the fund is being channelized towards the objects, where it reaches, what kind of a market impact it's going to create, what is the revenue generation. So those investors, unless they have a gut feel or unless they are sure, like promoters have a good knowledge, have done a proper market research before venturing into this business, they will not make an investment here. So such kind of due diligence is required. I have told you about the due diligence from legal perspective. From market perspective, they will also do an analysis. How the market performs. What is the need of this kind of a business? That is also necessary. So next is about the venture capital. So venture capital is where it's a specific, like how a company has a objects. Here the venture capital objects itself is to make investment to certain type of companies. When we say VCUs or the angel funds, where we have dealt with the funding, there has been views or the responses from the VCF like, we don't focus on certain areas. For example, we got a scenario of AA in HR. Okay, nowadays HR work is actually being taken over, marketing work is actually being taken over by AAs. Okay, finance, secretary, everywhere there is an influence of A. So A in HR was being proposed. But the VCU, the angel fund, VCF and the angel fund to whom we approached, that network had responded, sir, we are focusing on the IT, biotechnology, but we do not prefer in the HR field. Okay, reason we need to understand is not, they are not worried about the AA, it's an evolving area. We had verified this last year beginning, they responded this way. Reason is, labor codes have been introduced, it has been passed by the parliament. Rules are yet to be notified. So we don't know how the industry evolves. Because the labor code is yet to be implemented, regime is about to change in a year. What will be the decision of the government? How long will it take for all the states to implement the rules? So this is not just the A as a factor or payback as a factor, but this is where the political environment or the legal environment plays a role. So I had mentioned you about the due diligence. So due diligence is not just focused on the compliances. So we have to look into various aspects, cultural due diligence, or look into the finance due diligence, or legal due diligence, political due diligence. So the factor which I mentioned is actually a political due diligence. So funding is not always focused on ROI. That part we need to remember. So VCs actually seek for whatever funds are being made is capital appreciation or the instead of interest. So I had mentioned about 400% return. Okay. There the people who had invested, say for, if I'm not wrong, they had invested for 2000 rupees. Now it is going for 400 times, means per share if they have invested, relying upon the entrepreneur who has acquired that company, they will get so much returns. And someone who had invested 2000 rupees in say MRF, if they sell one share today, what is the price of that? 1,20,000 or so, it's going in peak. Okay, one share in 1990s, and 20 years it has, 20-30 years it has increased. So it's not to just promote stock market, but we need to understand when the funds are deployed in a sensible manner, returns are assured. But if you expect, okay, super duper returns within a short span of time, then the government cannot help you out. We need to be prudent enough where to invest, how much to invest. That's the initial phase of us to learn the compliance as well. So they finance both the early stage and later stage investment. You might have heard about many mobile applications. To name a few, Swiggy, Zomato is there. Okay, Ola is there. Every entity was initially set up as a startup in India. Every entity. Okay. Now those entities have also starting subsidiaries. Now the startup status is gone. They are starting subsidiaries. Their turnover has peaked. So now they have come for listing as well. Swiggy is into the listing, IPO. Okay. Reason for those entities to come to the level of listing is, one is they need to provide exit to the existing investors. Okay. In IPO there is a concept where the existing shareholders can sell the shares. But at the same time, how they grossed up so much investment is to the pitch, as well as proving that they will break even within a span of 5 years, 7 years. Until break even, it's very scary stage for them, because they are responsible for the funding made by the investors. So they will make as seed funding, pre-series A funding, series A, series B, series C, like that it goes on. What is the limit? Sky is the limit. Okay. Until they are able to achieve or come for an IPO, series will be going on. And we need to understand, in each series, the rights may also vary. Okay. Rights of shareholders may vary. And they may introduce a new class of shares. Under section 48, you would have learnt about the variation rights of class of shareholders. That's because like this different series comes into play. So such kind of series and rights enshrined as a issuer entity. In SEBI, we use the word issuer. In company law, we use the word company. Okay. So with the issuer entity needs to be careful. Every right is being honored. Or if you are not able to provide them that right, then we need to seek a return waiver. Where this return waiver is given, again under articles as part of the SHA, those things comes into the waiver picture. So the early stage financing can be seed capital, research and development, or for startup, or second round of financing. Or in case of later stage financing, it can be expansion or a buyout or a replacement capital or a turnaround. Suppose a company was about to achieve, say, break even. We would all have faced the COVID pandemic. Okay? Your parents would have faced, your siblings would have faced. It was going good until the pandemic impacted everyone's life with respect to the finance. Company falls. Then someone has to help us to lift from the fall. So that's how the turnaround capital also happened for few companies. For many companies, it didn't happen. Reason is everyone will wish to change their method. Okay. To name one turnaround, it's now I have told the success story. Where there is a negative story should also be brought to the notice of everyone. We would have heard about the online classes. If you have heard about the Byju's, at the time of pandemic, Byju's was in a investment spree. So when the investment is received on so much level, not only Byju's, Reliance was also making rights issue. Reliance kadacha panam mari, they also got it for the Byju's. Okay. And they were backed up by very famous investors until recently. Reason is, Byju's made a default. Now, insolvency in US they made a default, because of which his brother got. Now, Byju Ravindran also got caught here. Now, NCLT declared that company is subject to the insolvency. Okay, the matter is pending. Nariya issues irukku. So, subject to that, it goes on. So, on one side, the companies are being held out of turnaround. Now, if Byju's negative story in Sonana, the person who helped him to turn around last year now turned court now. Okay, he came to the court seeking the fund back. Boss, without repaying me, your company is not dissolved. I need to acquire it. And you need to understand when he was in the acquisition spree, avarkum funding vandadu, he also went into acquisition. Nariya kutti tuition centers. One of the famous one which was acquired was Akash. Okay, father and son duo are running it. Byju's survived for last 2 years only because of Akash. When you read the history of Byju's, only because of one institution, which ella institute liyu. What is the reason? What might be the reason in your view? இப்போ ஃபிசிக்கல் இருந்தாலும் ஆன்லைன் கிளாஸஸ் எல்லாத்துலேயும் ஆஃபர் பண்ணுறோம், ஃப்ரீ கிளாஸஸ் இருக்கு. தட் இஸ் அ டிஃப்ரெண்ட் ஸ்டோரி. வாட் மைட் பி தி ரீசன் ஃபார் ஃபால்? ஆன் விச் ஆஸ்பெக்ட்? பைசா நிறையா வந்தால் என்ன ஆகும்? எனிதிங் எல்ஸ்? See, the money is accumulated in one hand, wealth. Advertisements, very good. Then so they are also one reason. BCC has also put a case. Yes, then yes, so money given is high. Anything else? Okay, there is a delay. Deloitte has highlighted delayed filing. Yes, anything else? Where? Same reason. Something else. See, everyone is giving you money. What will you do with that? Ultimately, it goes in one hand. What will you do with that? So, நீங்க மட்டும் ஸ்பெண்ட் பண்ணா சந்தேகம் வரும். So, what will you do? Related party transaction was the major failure. That's where the corporate governance failed in them. Okay, RPT is where they identified the nexus for starting new entities. Okay, as well as the salary payments is actually where they laundered money. So it involved money laundering violation. It involved paying bribes in certain areas, corporate governance failure, audit committee didn't function properly because they didn't do a proper verification of RPT. So RPT is covered in both LODR and company law. So we need to understand a company which was helped in the later stage financing, which made acquisitions, which was helped for turnaround, made a default on corporate governance, made a default on money laundering law compliance. Okay, that impacted the company. Now the company is in entire default, and many people have been threatened. Many people are threatening him. Both is happening. So there is a positive side, there is a negative side. ரெண்டுமே நம்ம பார்க்கணும். Next. So next is about the seed capital. This is where I was mentioning about the process to due diligence, and then pass 4 circulation, opening separate bank account, and then making the pass 3 allotment. But what are the nuances which they will check? One is the resort matter, which I said. Apart from that, there are few other things the investor expects because as they are providing a seed capital. Board seat. You would have heard about the concept nominee director. Seed capital investors prefer to have a board seat as a nominee director. Okay. Another thing is some companies might offer what is known as observer seat, non-voting seat. For example, recently when our Prime Minister visited G7 conference in Italy, India is not part of the G7 grouping. Okay, but still our Prime Minister was invited. What is the reason? It's just to honor the person, his presence and views on the topics being discussed. But in the decision making, he is not there. He is not part of the voting. But his voice was heard and it influenced the decisions. Okay, this is not only for our PM, it's happening for few select leaders across the globe. For India, this is emerging for last few years. For few other countries, it's already been there. So we need to understand the requirement to have the observer seat. We will feel like in the agreement, just an observer seat, but that's where the influence also comes in the decision making. Okay, and you might have heard about Bharat Pay. கேள்விப்பட்டிருக்கீங்களா? Ashneer Grover. So he was part of which forum before he was kicked out of the company? Since we are discussing on funding, if someone has watched have you heard about Shark Tank? So he's part of that. Okay, he was kicked out from that as well as in this because he had a problem with the co-founder, and he alleged the co-founder actually turned around. Reason is he was influenced by the incumbent non-executive chairperson who was actually a former MD chairperson of the SBA, Rajneesh Kumar. So he thought he is bringing a SBA veteran into the company. At the end, he was kicked out of the company. There as well, it was an allegation of RPT. Okay, so such kind of things may happen. So in seed capital, they expect the board seat, observer seat, reserved matters, and updates. Next is about the startups where post the launch of product. See, product means not just we hold or see tangibly. Sometimes it can be intangible, which is treated as a product. Software, okay, it's intangible asset. It's a product for them. So we cannot differentiate between software or a product when we speak to a IT person. For us, it might be different. For him, it's the same. Okay. So when we say about the product or when we say about the software, what is the intention of software? How it's going to impact in the society? What is the revenue? That's where the pitch deck comes into play. So the startups, since they are evolving, there is a forum in the SEBI as well. In ICDR, we used to cover Innovators Growth Platform. That is specifically for where innovation is happening in the technology. So, அந்த மாதிரி புதுசா UPI, for example, நம்ம யூஸ் பண்றோம் இல்லையா, Google Pay or Bar, அது எல்லாமே அவுட் ஆஃப் தோஸ் இனோவேஷன்ஸ் தான் வெளில வந்தது. அதுக்காக தான் சாண்ட்பாக்ஸ் மெக்கானிசம்னு ஒன்று இருக்கு இன் செபி, RBI, இன்சூரன்ஸ் ரெகுலேஷன். வாட் டு யூ அண்டர்ஸ்டாண்ட் பை தி வேர்ட் சாண்ட்பாக்ஸ் மெக்கானிசம்? யாராவது கேள்விப்பட்டிருக்கீங்களா சாண்ட்பாக்ஸ் மெக்கானிசம்? எஸ், வாட் இஸ் இட்? சாரி, வாட் எவர் யூ நோ, யூ கேன் ஜஸ்ட் ஷேர் யுவர் வியூஸ். Researching, okay. Can you connect with your childhood days? அதுதான் பேசிஸ் ஆக்சுவலா சாண்ட்பாக்ஸ் மெக்கான். Yes, you would have built castles, okay, you would have built big bungalows எல்லாமே சின்ன வயசுல நம்ம நர்சரியில் படிச்சிருக்கோம்னா how we try to innovate நம்மளோட கேப்பபிலிட்டி, நம்மளோட பிரெயின் எப்படி யூஸ் பண்றோன்றதுக்காக we are being given various tools. Yes, correct. Yes, you are right. So I am going to showcase my new technology within a limited environment, a monitored environment, because it should not create a havoc in the society. If I can relate it, எப்படி கன்ஃபியூஷன் வரும்னா, crowd strike கேள்விப்பட்டிருக்கீங்களா? Recently, no? What do you know about that? Very good. It was not actually corruption. They actually tried to do an update. Technology development பண்ணி deploy பண்ற ஸ்டேஜில் there is a bug, because of which services across the globe got affected. Okay. So it's not always the antivirus. CrowdStrike is actually promoted by the individuals who came out of McAfee or some antivirus software deployment. Again, when the developers deployed this, but it resulted in a failure at the time of deployment. So something which you thought good might have an impact negatively. That's the reason for Sandbox in India, where they say deploy it in a limited space, monitored environment. Just check how it works. In the initial phase itself, you resolve all the problems. Then come to the society, larger economy. Then again deploy how it works. If you have learned about the RBI development, there's a concept UPI vandadanaala, as well as you would have heard about the digital currency. e-rupee அப்படின்னு ஒரு கான்செப்ட் இருக்கு, கேஷ்லெஸ். தட்ஸ் அகெயின் அவுட் ஆஃப் இனோவேஷன். ஸோ இதெல்லாம் தான் சாண்ட்பாக்ஸில் வந்தது. தட்ஸ் த ரீசன் டு ஹாவ் இட் இன் RBI, இன்சூரன்ஸ், ஆல் ஸ்டஃப். So next is second round funding. Now I had told you about the Series A, Series B. So when we do Series A, Series B, we need to be careful. We honor the commitments or the rights given to the previous series holders. Okay, otherwise we need to take their consent. End of the day, without their consent, we cannot proceed here. That's where the reserved matter comes into play. So அதெல்லாம் தான் second round funding la varum. So this second round funding usually takes place between 3 to 7 years. This is present scenario. It may vary over a period of time. Development capital is actually where the product is there, but they are not able to go to the public, or public they have reached, but still they want to expand geographically. For example, when we dealt about the company with respect to the VC, I'm saying product was developed, deployed in India, but the expected reach was not there. See, we need to understand as a technocrat, they are having some vision how to deploy this, how to use this, but end user oda purpose may differ, or how they use may differ. Okay, we try to move on different paths. So that's where the difficulty in deployment comes. Now the company, what they did is they withdrew the product in Indian market from the app, Google Play Store and the iOS. Now they have deployed it in US, where it's earning good in the initial phase itself. They are yet to do the proper marketing. Okay, reason for that good reach in the initial phases, the investors who relied upon the company, who have made investment, have made a reach to their known circles how to use the app. So it's not always the marketing has to be done by the company. Sometimes our well-wishers, investors, because it's their money which is being deployed, so they will try to educate how to use it. Next come. So next is the expansion finance, where it can be geographical one or the new factories. Nowadays green buildings are very popular, or environmental friendly buildings are very popular. We are promoting the more of ecologically sensitive habits, so that it doesn't affect the environment. You might have heard about, if I'm not wrong, in some topics, blue economy, green economy and all. Okay, basically which does not impact much in the sea water. Okay, we try to use the hydroelectricity, renewable energy. Or when we say green economy, we try to reduce the reliance on the petroleum or the diesel for the fuel generators. Rather, we try to move to the hydroelectricity, or we try to move to the hydrogen gas. In electric vehicles as well as in diesel, they are mixing ethanol. I don't know how many of you are aware about that. So there's a percentage, so few people are saying yes. So percentage has been increased. Silently it has been increased from 5% to 20%. Reason for government not mentioning, reason is, unless it succeeds, nowadays the government does not put a progress report. They are waiting for the proper implementation. So such kind of expansion finance may happen, but these expansion may happen in 3 years, 5 years, 7 years. It depends on the objects of the company, how it grows. Next is replacement, where due to various reasons or personal need or conflict in family, they might want to move away. Okay, purchase of shares happen. See, replacement capital need not be only in startup. I had told about Bharat Pay, where there is a acquisition which is happening. Apart from that, if as part of the due diligence and the SHA itself, one more clause which I wanted to mention here is, you may have heard about vesting schedule, ESOPs la varum. Okay, employee stock option la grant, vesting, excise என்ற concept ஒன்று. Vesting is actually what is the waiting period for you to exercise the right. Options exercise பண்ணி இங்கே ஷேர்ஸ் வாங்க போகிறேன். ஆனால் இந்த கைண்ட் ஆஃப் வெஸ்டிங்கில், ரீப்ளேஸ்மெண்ட்டில் என்ன ஆகும், ஆர் நார்மல் இன்வெஸ்ட்மெண்ட்டில் என்ன ஆகும்னா, they'll keep a schedule of vesting. I have made an investment in your entity as a VCU. நீ மாட்டி அவன்கிட்ட வித்துட்டு ஓடி போயிட்டேனா, so I will lock your shares. Your shares are subject to lock in. Okay, lock-in will be engrossed on your share certificate practically, or if it is a demat, unless I give my consent, you will not be able to sell your shares. Over a 4-year period, 5-year period, or 8-year period, percentage wise shares will come back to you as ownership. On paper, you are the owner. There is no denial. On list of shareholders, you are the owner. But you cannot exercise the right as a shareholder with respect to sale. Transmission can happen, voting can happen, dividend can be there. There is no doubt. Dividend la initially varadu. Nanachu kuda paakudadu. It will take some years. That's where these promoters take it as salary. Okay, 3 lakhs, 5 lakhs எடுத்துன்னு போயிட்டே இருப்பாங்க. ஃபண்டிங்லாம் அப்படி தான் ட்ரை ஆகுது. ஸோ ரீப்ளேஸ்மெண்ட் கேபிட்டல் அந்த மாதிரி ஆகலாம். ஆர் செகண்ட் வே இஸ் வேர் தே வாண்ட் டு பை அவுட் தி ஷேர்ஸ் ஃப்ரம் எனி ஸ்பெசிஃபைடு ப்ரமோட்டர். அவங்களுக்கும் நமக்கும் ஒத்து வரல. திஸ் ஹேஸ் ஹேப்பன்ட் இன் ஸ்விக்கி, ஓலா, பிகாஸ் தே வில் பி ஹெட் ஆஃப் சர்டன் விங். வி ஆர் கோயிங் டு diverge that. Okay, 181A when you sell or dispose of any unit which is going to contribute to more than 20% னு வெச்சுக்கோங்க. If you want to sell, lease, dispose of, and undertaking அப்படின்ற வேர்ட் யூஸ் பண்ணுவோம் 181A. ஸோ அந்த மாதிரி பண்ணுறச்சே ஒரு விங்கே நீங்கள் வந்து டிமர்ஜ் பண்ணி விட்டுறீங்க. யூ ஆர் ஹைவிங் ஆஃப் த யூனிட், தென் தட் பர்சன் இஸ் கோயிங் டு எக்ஸிட். அந்த சமயத்தில் ரீப்ளேஸ்மெண்ட் நடக்கலாம். Or family arrangementனால settlement நடக்கலாம். That can also be there. Next is turnaround, where this involves buying the control of sick company which requires specialized skills. இதுக்கு I can quote the company name, there is no harm. CG Power. If you are interested, go and check about that. It was acquired by an entity based out of Chennai. That's where the returns grew so much. The numbers I gave is illustrative. Numbers may vary. Okay, but if you read the article about the CG Power turnaround, it will be very interesting. How the person worked day and night, how the team worked with respect to the implementation of these strategies. So sick companies acquire பண்ணி ரன் பண்றது is an art. IRP இருக்கிறது வேற மாதிரி. But after you acquire, you have to settle off debts, everything. You are taking a big risk. Okay, we used to say unknown liabilities are there. நீங்க assets and liabilities சொல்றீங்க இல்லையா, அது மட்டும் இல்லை, unknown liabilities will be there. Every investment will come with the unknown liability. ஏன் எங்கேருந்து கிளம்புவானே தெரியாது, some liability will be there. Okay, you might not agree with the liability, or IRP may not have been admitted that liability. Now we are forced to admit என்ற கேள்விலாம் வரும். So we need to understand those aspects as well. Next is buyout, which is management buyout or management buy-in. Buy-in is actually more riskier. Buyout is where I am going to acquire, or management buy-in is where you are going to provide an existing company, the outside group of managers. You are going to provide a more funding. Management team இருக்கும், or target company இருக்கும், or investor. So they are going to pull in more funds. Yes, so next is angel funds. This is where the individual or the entity or the trust firm, any type of institution can come. Majority is individual. I don't deny that fact. But for the purpose of their own family benefit, they try to pull in funds through the privately held family trust. ஏன்னா ஒருத்தர் வந்து இன்வெஸ்ட் பண்ணாக்க அவங்களுக்கு மட்டும் போகும். Instead of that, they invest through the trust, so that the whatever proceeds come on sale in a future date goes to the trust. From there, it is distributed to the beneficiaries of trust. உங்களுக்கு trust concept of basic தெரிஞ்சிருக்கும். So I am just proceeding from there. So in the angel investor is usually an individual where they have an assets of at least 2 crores. இந்த வேல்யூலாம் கொஞ்சம் மாறலாம். Okay, 5 crores இருக்கலாம், 10 crores, it depends. But generally it is 2 crores. And has experience as a serial entrepreneur. Serial entrepreneur na, they promote more companies, manage more companies, and they have co-promoted more than one startup venture. So they come in this bracket. And senior management professional with at least 10 years of experience. Tomorrow your chief guest who's coming from that company as well, we have seen investment. I am saying individual, not from himself, in his company, who has been the occupying the highest office. Our time the investment vandum paathirukom, because they will do due diligence. We have seen investment from you may have heard about Freshworks, kelvipatirukela, Girish Matrubudam. who went for IPO in US. அவங்கள்ட்ட இன்னும் இன்வெஸ்ட்மெண்ட் பார்த்துருக்கோம். ஜோஹோ யூ வுட் ஹவ் ஹர்ட் எம்போஷியர். ஸோ அந்த மாதிரிலாம் இன்வெஸ்ட்மெண்ட் வரும். ஏன் இந்த பேர்லாம் எங்களுக்கு ரொம்ப காமனாக தெரியறதுன்னா, we have seen investment in the startups with whom we deal. இந்த மாதிரி individuals act as angel investors. It's not like we communicate day in day out with them. Okay, அந்த அளவு இன்னும் இருக்கு, நிறையா இருக்கு. But they make investment. What is the structure they expect? What are the rights they expect? That's where we get into the discussion. And in case it's a body corporate which is making, then net worth is 10 crores. They need to have in their objects for making investment. In case it's a AF or VCF, it should be registered with the relevant regulations of SEBI. Next Kanna. So individual, body corporate, what is the difference? In a related அதெல்லாம் கொடுத்திருக்கேன். It's more of company law. The control na, it is more relevant to the SAST. Okay, I'm not touching those too much of legal no. Next. So until now we have seen funding in the VCU or the entity. Okay, I am yet to complete FDI. Give me 15 more minutes, so I'll try to close with it. So angel fund schemes na, idila vande how those entities receive the funds as angel funds. From there only it is being channelized into the VCUs. So angel funds can issue units to the angel investors and it shall not be listed on stock exchange. Yes, interesting, stock exchange. We need to understand the objective of promoting the angel investors is to help out the early stage companies, not those companies which have been running for a very long. அவங்கள பற்றி நமக்கு வரி இல்லை, லிஸ்டடா ஐ எம் நாட் வரிட். பட் அன்லிஸ்டடுன்றதுக்கு தான் we are more worried. They need the funding. So angel fund shall have a corpus of at least 5 crores. That is whatever their initial funding setup, they need to have it as 5 crores. And they shall accept maximum period of 5 years. In the clause தான் நிறைய கம்பெனி வந்து angel funds AF வந்து நிறைய பேர் breach பண்றான்ற allegations. SEBI is also having evergreening of fund is happening. Not only in angel fund, AFல ரொம்ப காமனா நடக்கிறது அப்படின்ற ஒரு allegation இருக்கு. So angel fund shall raise funds only through private placement. நம்ம section 42 of Companies Act சொல்றோம். So preferential issue. So there needs to be an identified investor. To know more about the angel investment, you can just browse through few websites, okay, such as Chennai Angels no irukanga. I am saying from the Chennai group. Okay, similarly in IIT Madras there is a incubation center. அங்கேயுமே வந்து ஏஞ்சல் இன்வெஸ்டர்ஸ் இருக்காங்க, அதை பற்றியும் நீங்கள் தெரிஞ்சுக்கலாம். இஃப் யூ ஜஸ்ட் ப்ரௌஸ் த்ரூ தெம். தென் கீரட்சு ஃபோரம் அப்படின்னு ஒன்று இருக்குது, இவங்க எல்லாரோடையும் டீல் பண்ணியிருக்கோம். தே வில் நாமினேட் 1 person as the coordinator. அவங்க மூலியமாக தான் ஃபண்டு வந்து சேனலைஸ் ஆகிறது இண்டிவிஜுவல் பார்ட்டிஸ். பட் பேப்பர் சைன் ஆகுது, வாட் ஆர் த ரைட்ஸ், டியூ டெலிஜென்ஸ், எவ்ரி திங் இஸ் டன் டு தி ஸ்பாக். ஓகே, சிங்கிள் பாயிண்ட் ஆஃப் கான்டாக்ட். So in case the angel fund is formed as a company, then Companies Act compliance needs to be done. Idila, since I am mentioning about 5th point, more relevant is what happens is few companies to receive funds, they accept funds from other company. Deposit rules, acceptance of deposit rules, there is a exemption. Rule 2(1) clause C அப்படின்னு ஒன்று இருக்கு. What are the amounts received by the company from the following which is not treated as a loan or deposit அப்படின்ற ஒரு provision இருக்கு, under which the startup funding everything comes. Convertible note, share issue if it is to be allotted within 60 days, bank finance அதெல்லாம். ஏன் இதை இன்னும் ஸ்பெசிஃபிக்காக சொல்கிறேன்னா, you need to file form DPT3 for this annually. Amounts received not considered as deposits. There are few register of companies adjudication orders where they have noticed companies have received funding through platforms. அதுவும் ஒரு கம்பெனி தான். பிளாட்ஃபார்மோட ஒர்க் என்னன்னா, if you need the funding, you just provide your pitch deck on the portal, it will reach out to the investors and they will receive the funding. This is what is happening. From the platform, the amount will be credited to your account. But what is the violation in this? We need to understand. Sorry. Thanks. What is the violation in this? In the pitch deck வந்து யூஸ்வலி எல்லாருக்கும் சர்க்குலேட் ஆகுது, யாருன்னே தெரியாது. But the objective of private placement under section 42 is You need to circulate the private placement offer letter. Private. அந்த வேர்டே என்னன்னா டு ஐடென்டிஃபைடு இன்வெஸ்டார். நீ அவங்க ஒருத்தருக்கு பண்ணாம ஊருக்கே பண்றேன்னா யூ ஆர் டூயிங் அ பப்ளிக் ஆஃபர். இட் ரீச்சஸ் மோர் தென் 200 persons. இட்ஸ் அ வயலேஷன் ஆஃப் private company. Okay, that's where the ROC has adjudicated stating the company has violated 1 crore penalty. And CS or CFO directors who have structured this, each 5 lakh. Okay, we need, அவங்களுக்கு மேபி 5 lakh சின்னதாக இருக்கலாம், but as a CS CFO unnecessary, and the name is being put in an order saying they have violated. So we need to understand private placement means company has to directly do it. Next. So these first slide we saw how they issue units and receive funds. Here we are going to see how they make investment, because their investment is also subject to restriction from SEBI side. Their fund shall be subject to lock-in. They can make in any unlisted company which is treated as VCU. Now beginning of the presentation sonna minimum 25 lakh, maximum 10 crore is the limit. And in one VCU their investment should not exceed 50%, 25% limit irukku. Now recently you may have heard about the Adani Hindenburg story last year la irundha ippeyum recent ah vandhathu. The reason for that report is also, one is RPT, other thing is funding. Funding la da main ah vecham. What happened is, through the funding happened through their related entity. So they routed the money outside, came back to India through the FPIs, foreign portfolio investors, indirectly held by their relatives. Again fund is going from here. So the fund was routed, which is a violation of ODI norms, money laundering norms. அதுதான் allegation. It's yet to be proved. இன்னி தேதிக்கு எந்த violationம் இல்லைன்னு ரிப்போர்ட் வந்துடுது. We don't know how it is going to go. Okay, end of the day the people are given clean sheet, they escape, investors get affected because of market sentiments. Next is, company should not have any family connection. That is one condition. And angel fund shall not invest more than 25%, which I mentioned. And they can also invest in companies incorporated outside India. That is also allowed, subject to the ODA norms. Okay, overseas direct investment norms. And they need to comply with the DIPP regulations. Adha ipo name has changed, DPIAT. Okay, Department for Promotion of Internal Trade District. Okay, under the Ministry of Commerce and Industry. Turnover is, that is where they are going to invest, is less than 25 crore rupees. That has been increased to 40 crore if I'm not wrong, and are not promoted or sponsored by any of the industrial group. இதுக்கு தான் நான் சொன்னேன் holding, subsidiary, associate எதுவும் இருக்கக்கூடாது. It's a standalone entity, I would have mentioned. Yes, next is FVCI. Here I have almost come to the fag end. I am not going to cover everything from slide. This first time உங்களுக்கு சொல்லிட்டேன், because my focus was FDI. இது வந்து more of SEBI regulations. Okay, the reason for me to say about FDI is, FEMALA there is challenged into 3 parts. When the entities receive FDI investment, it is treated as a FDI. When the entities receive loans, it is covered under ECB guidelines. Okay, there is no separate regulations. External commercial borrowing. When the companies or any individual make investment outside India, I am not saying equity shares, investment. So please remember that regulations include immovable property investment. Okay, so when such kind of investment is made, overseas investment regulations is being followed. Now ODA solreen because we all studied as ODA, but now they have clubbed 2 regulations and mentioned as OA regulations under FEM, and they have given master direction. So RBI has issued master direction and regulation. Central government has issued rules. So when we receive FDI, I'll just cover it in next 5 minutes. Okay, FDI ODA, just a brief process. What happens is, in case of FDI, apart from the company law compliances, I had mentioned about the valuation. They will require a merchant banker valuation. Okay, there is a thumb rule in FEMA. If you are receiving investment, it should not be less than the value prescribed by the valuer. Per share value, whatever you receive, it should not be less than that. Discount kuda tharakudadu. Okay, suppose 550 rupees is the value given. Your issue price should be not less than 550 rupees. It can be higher than that. ODI la appade reverse. The value what you make as investment should not be more than the valuation report. 550 rupees is the value of share for subscribing outside India. Na, you can subscribe less than that or exactly to that 550, but not more than that. What is the intent? உங்களோட வியூல என்ன ரீசனா இருக்கும்? ஃபாரெக்ஸ் வந்து நம்ம ப்ரிசர்வ் பண்ணணும். நீங்களா அப்போ பிறந்திருப்பேலா தெரியுமான்னு தெரில. ஹிஸ்ட்ரி 1992 என்ன நடந்தது இந்தியாவில்? அதுக்கு முன்னாடி என்ன நடந்தது? வேற என்ன? வாட் டிட் இந்தியா டூ டு எல்பிஜி தவிர? நம்மலாம் எல்பிஜி எக்கனாமிக்ஸ் அதை ஒன்று வச்சுடுறோம். Okay. Have you heard about gold vaults? Okay. RBI purchases gold. Okay. நம்மளும் கோல்ட்லாம் வாங்குறோம், அதெல்லாம் ஓகே. Gold prices are increasing. RBI also purchases golds. The reason for LPG, we need to understand, economy was in turmoil. Plus, India had to pledge the gold. Bank of England. At that point in time. அது நிறைய பேருக்கு தெரியாது ஹிஸ்ட்ரி. அந்த கோல்டை ரிட்ரீவ் பண்ணணும்னா there is no other option but to open our economy and bring in more foreign investment, industrialization at a faster pace, relaxing the FEMA. நம்ம FEMAன்றது எப்போ வந்ததுன்னா 1999ல. Until 1999, when FEMA was implemented in 2000, if I'm not wrong, until that year, FERA was there, Foreign Exchange Regulation Act. Name the regulation. Yesterday I learnt a new view on that FERA. Under FEMA we learn about the compounding etc. But when FERA was there, enakku nanu practically paathadilla, padichadu kuda illa adala. When FERA was there, if you breach certain threshold, okay, you have to appear before the army tribunal, and the person who has breached will not be represented by the council. No advocate, no CS, no CA, no CMA. They have to represent themselves. Assume a layman, if you have breached without knowing the provisions of FERA, if you are being pulled to the army court, how it will be? You will be asked questions. You don't know how to answer. First of all, how to stand up and stand up before the army tribunal. Okay, presiding officer, theriyadu. Ipdilam irundirukku. So now it is more relaxed. I got to know from a very experienced person, from a chartered accountant yesterday. So அந்த மாதிரி இருந்ததுலேருந்து இன்னி தேதிக்கு diluted. So FDA பொறுத்த வரைக்கும் we need to understand, we need to get a valuation report. Plus you need to make an intimation, since it's a FDA டைரக்டாக வந்ததுனால form FCGPR. Timeline is within 30 days. Okay, இதில் valuation report மட்டும் இல்லை, you have to provide the investment clauses. What is the valuation, எதுக்கு இன்வெஸ்ட் பண்ணுறோம், என்ன ஆப்ஜெக்ட்ஸ், க்ரீன்ஃபீல்ட் ப்ரௌன்ஃபீல்ட் பற்றி சொல்லியிருப்பேன், those clauses. Plus suppose there is a layer before that investment structure, நாங்கள் ப்ராக்டிக்கலாக டீல் பண்ணதும் சொல்கிறேன். On one side FDI, another investor was there who is making investment in INR. They are a VCU, VCF, registered with SEBI AF. But they are also receiving investment from outside India. Okay, they have received investment from outside India for which form FCGPR is filed. They need to file form DI, downstream investment no ஒன்று பண்ணணும், for which we need to register, give our details. இதெல்லாம் இப்போ ப்ராக்டிக்கலாக எவால்வ் ஆகுது, லாஸ்ட் 3 இயர்ஸில் தான் நடந்துட்டு இருக்கு. Apart from that, after this is completed, last ஒரு 2022 if I'm not wrong, instead of the compounding, if the delay is within 3 years, if it is not too violative, just a procedural delay, administrative in nature, you can pay what is known as LSF, late submission fee. இதெல்லாம் கொஞ்சம் ஜாகிரதையாக பார்த்துக்கணும். ப்ளஸ் ஃபண்டு வரச்சு யூ நீட் டு கோஆர்டினேட். ஓகே, இதை தவிர நெக்ஸ்ட் ஒன் வந்து ODA, வேர் வி செட் அப் ஆஃபீஸ் அவுட் சைட் இந்தியா, பி இட் WOS or any other form of investment. We need to be sure about the regulations there. That's where we struggle. Okay, because we have not learned, we have not practiced that law, we don't know how to access. Okay, one interesting fact which happened to me is, I try to learn that law and I try to inspect the records. ரியலாகவே அந்த கம்பெனி இன்கார்பரேட் ஏன் அப்படி செக் பண்ணுறோன்னா ஆஸ் அ பீசிஸ் வி நீட் டு சர்டிஃபை த இன்வெஸ்ட்மெண்ட். எஸ் இட் இஸ் வித் இன் த லிமிட்ஸ் எங்கே செக் பண்ணுவீங்க? கம்பெனி லாவில் தெர் இஸ் செக்ஷன் 186 லோன்ஸ் இன்வெஸ்ட்மெண்ட் கேரண்டி செக்யூரிட்டி தட் இஸ் கால்ட் அஸ் கேஷ் அவுட்ஃப்ளோ செக்ஷன். எங்களுக்கு எங்க சார் அப்படிதான் சொல்லி கேஷ் அவுட்ஃப்ளோ செக்ஷன். 181 is cash inflow section, loan, borrowing, share capital, cash inflow section. So when cash outflow is happening, section 186 gets triggered, ODA gets triggered. And ODA பொறுத்த வரைக்கும் நான் FDA சொல்றச்சே ECBன்னு சொன்ன லோன் வாங்குறச்சே when you are providing loan or guarantee again under 186 it's covered as fund based non fund based, guarantee non fund based ன்னு சொல்லுவோம். That is also covered as ODA. So when you are providing fund that needs to be certified, value should not be, subscription price should not be greater than the value prescribed by the valuer in India, and you need to provide the share certificate within 180 days of making the investment. They will allot what is known as UIN, unique identification number. அந்த ரெக்கார்ட் ஒரே AD பேங்க் மூலியமாக தான் ஃபர்தர் டிரான்சாக்ஷனும் பண்ணும் with respect to those WOS. So what are the certificates required, compliances required, agreements, அந்த மாதிரி திங்ஸ்லாம். இன்ட்ரெஸ்டிங் ஃபேக்ட் என்ன சொன்னால் இன்ஸ்பெக்ட் பண்ணுறச்சே I had paid $10, okay, for $20, $1,600 not somewhere அந்த மாதிரி ப்ரைஸ் வந்தது ப்ளஸ் சார்ஜஸ் தனியாக வந்தது. After doing the transaction inspection, I have called up by my bank verifying why I made this international transaction, forex. Plus இன்னொரு ப்ராப்ளம் என்ன வரும்னு பார்த்தீங்கன்னா இன்கம் டேக்ஸ் டிபார்ட்மெண்ட்டில் இப்போ ஏஎஸ் இஷ்யூ பண்ணுறாங்க, அதில் போய் ரிப்போர்ட் ஆகும். ஸோ ஐ நீட் டு ஆன்சர் தட். Because of one certificate, I am answerable to bank, I am answerable to income tax department. That is I need to clarify. இது எதுவும் வந்து தப்பு இல்லை, என்னோட பிஸ்னஸ் சம்மந்தமாக பண்ணுறேன். But still I need to ensure I comply with the different laws. I am giving a certificate another FEM-ODA for which I am checking foreign registry, how to do. So this is how the compliances flow. The reason for me to give the topic as to sir as primer is to touch upon the SEBI, FEMA and Companies Act. I hope I have given you a brief. You have a very vast area to learn and practice. Whichever field you choose, I'd request you to study what is the legal provision first, and specifically from the BAR Act, not from any online articles. Dayav senju nambadil, okay? Even if I write, don't write. First study the BAR Act. அதுக்கப்புறம் நீங்கள் ஒப்பீனியன்ஸ்க்கு வாங்க. ஃபர்ஸ்ட் ஃபார்ம் யோர் ஒப்பீனியன் இன் மைண்ட், தென் டிஸ்கஸ் வித் அதர்ஸ் ஃபார் தேர் ஒப்பீனியன், செக் ஃபார் அதர்ஸ் ஒப்பீனியன். அன்லெஸ் யூ ஹாவ் அன் ஐடியா, யூ வில் பி இம்போஸ்ட் பை அதர்ஸ் ஐடியா. ஓகே, டீச்சிங் இஸ் டிஃப்ரெண்ட். இங்கே வந்து நாங்கள் படிச்சுட்டு வந்து சொல்லி தரோம், நாங்களும் அதில் அனுபவம் பட்டு வந்து சொல்லி தரோம். பட் வென் யூ லேர்ன் ஃப்ரம் ஆர்டிகல்ஸ், ஓகே, ஜஸ்ட் பை ரீடிங் இட், நான் ஒரு ப்ரொவிஷன் கிடையவே கிடையாது. ஏன்னா அவங்க எந்த இன்டென்ஷனில் எழுதினாங்க நமக்கு தெரியாது, உங்களால் கிளாரிஃபிகேஷனும் எல்லா இடத்துலையும் கேட்க முடியாது. ஓகே, அண்ட் ரிலை ஆன் புக்ஸ், ஜஸ்ட் நாட் தட் PDF அந்த மாதிரி இல்லை. ஃப்ளிப் த்ரூ புக்ஸ், கொஞ்சம் படிங்கோ, கெயின் நாலேஜ், ஸ்ப்ரெட் நாலேஜ். தட்ஸ் மை ரெக்வெஸ்ட். தேங்க்யூ ஸோ மச் ஃபார் தி ஆப்பர்ச்சுனிட்டி.